Today I'm going to be changing the spark plugs on my '05 Grand Caravan. The front ones, as you're well aware, are easy enough to get to. These rear plugs, I mean, you can reach through back here and get at them. It gets tougher when you get down to that one on the end, on the what's actually the front end of the engine. You have a hard time getting any kind of leverage on them, and I've actually snapped a spark plug doing it that way, but you can do it that way. But anymore, what I prefer to do, and I don't know if we can see them here, I have scars actually on my forearm from doing it that way, catching it on sharp edges. But anymore, what I do is I remove this whole assembly for the windshield wipers, and that gives you open access to everything in there. So whether you're there's the upper oxygen sensor right there. It makes it easy to get to that. That one's a bugger in any situation to remove. Also, if you're swapping out your struts, you can reach under there with your open end wrench, etc. But having this out of the way just makes life a whole lot easier with that job. So let me get started on that. Your tools are basically your typical ratchets. I do recommend on the small nuts, I'll show you that you don't actually use a ratchet, that you use just a nut driver attachment so you don't strip them out because they are small. You will need a long extension. You may need a gear puller, especially if you've never removed the windshield wipers from your van in the past. They're probably seized, basically cold welded onto there, and you'll need that to get them loose. If you have them, a set of air tools, air ratchet makes things go by a lot faster, and you'll want to use the air gun too. I always like to start by undoing the wire harness here so I don't forget, because that's attached. Well, you get the idea. Just undo that. Undo your two rain gutters. You got one here and you got one back there. And if you still have the clips, basically you twist the two halves to the side to unlock them. Take that apart and then just push. Don't even really have to undo it. Just push the rain gutters down and out of the way. And then you have your water line for your windshield wipers. You'll undo that. And then we're going to close the hood, and then we're going to take the windshield wipers off. Okay, now with the hood closed, you'll either have a cover over here, or later years they just put a cap over there, remove that. And then it's a 15mm bolt or 15mm nut. Take that off the windshield wiper, and then I'll show you how to get the arm off. If you've never taken the arm off before, it's not going to want to come off. And just as a side note, this is actually brake caliper paint that I used on here, because these always fade away and look ratty. Last time I had these off, I sanded it lightly, sprayed it with the brake caliper paint, then baked them in the oven. And I think it's been about 2 years now, and they still look good. Okay, now this is how I put on the gear puller. I make sure that the center shaft is right over top of the shaft of the windshield wiper gear. You have to kind of adjust these on the side, and it's a long way. If you're using this one, there's other gear pullers out there that you could try. I've had this one off before, so it's probably going to pop right loose for me. Let's see if we can show this to you guys. Yeah, it's loose already. If yours is on there really tight, first thing you do is just grab the wiper and try rocking it back and forth, see if it comes loose for you. If that doesn't work, then you're going to have to move on to here, and sometimes you crank it really hard and still not coming loose, at which point give it a whack with a hammer. Don't break your windshield, and it'll usually come free with that. When I assemble it again, and I'll show you when we come down to that, I always put anti-seize lubricant down on the splines of this so I can get it apart easily in the future. Okay, now you're going to need your T25 Torx bit, and you're going to remove the 6 Torx screws that are hidden along this cover. And you have 2 of these little cam lock things. There's a little arm that's underneath. I don't know if you can see it in there or not. Just going to get out of the way. I always turn it counterclockwise until you see the arm that fits underneath the piece of sheet metal up there, exposed down there. That way that's not hooked. And then after that, open up the hood. Now just lift this up and pull your water line, sprayer line out, grommet and all. Comes out real easy. Next step I'm not going to show you, because you're going to have to flex this thing in order to pull it out from under the hood. It catches on the ends. So let me get that done. Okay, now you have 10 millimeters up here. 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. You also have 4 13 millimeters here. I'm going to undo those. And then where you're going to need the extension and having the air ratchet comes in handy is you got 4 long bolts tucked away. You know, one down in there, one here, other end. They're fairly long bolts, and it'll be a lot quicker using power tools. And I forgot, you want to use a 13 millimeter deep socket on these front bolts, because a shallow socket won't reach over the stub there. Okay, all bolts are out. Now you're just going to pull all these brackets loose and then be able to lift this thing right out of the car. Practical word of advice: if it's a sunny day, keep all these parts in the shade, otherwise when you go to put them back together they will be too hot to touch. Okay, that's out of there, and look at all the room we have to work now. Getting to those plugs will be no problem. Down there, that's the upper oxygen sensor. If you need to replace that, that's a bugger in any situation. But this does make it easier. They also say that the dealer changes these rear plugs from underneath, and I just do not see how that's possible. So, but anyway, but yeah, this for all kinds of work. If you had to replace these crossover hoses, which I actually did, just because of the age, I replaced them. Took this whole assembly apart to get access to all of this. Now I'm not going to go into actually showing you how to change spark plugs, because it's kind of like telling you how to change a light bulb, other than after you get the plugs backed out 3/4 of the way, they have a real long thread on them. Take compressed air, because you're going to find there's all kind of crud that's sitting down in there, and it could fall down into the combustion chamber. So blow that out of the way first. When you put it all back together, if they're new plugs, you really don't need to use anti-seize, because they already have a coating on there. Personally, I put a little bit, just a little dab of it on there anyway. But you're going to want to use dielectric grease on the inside of the boots, both at the plug, and I also do it at the ignition coil. And what that does is that creates a seal so that you don't have any arcing down the walls of the boot down to ground on the base of the spark plug. Especially if there's dirt down there, electricity will just take the shortest path and go right through that dirt, carbon, and to ground, and then you'll get a rough idle. Another hint, if you don't already know, you want to thread your new spark plugs on by hand. I get them most of the way down, and then put the ratchet on it. Don't try using the ratchet to thread it in there initially. You can cross thread it very easily. It's an aluminum cylinder head, and you can strip that sucker right out. Okay, let's have a look at what I pulled out of here. These are Denso twin tips, and I will do a separate video on a review on these. And basically, I'm surprised the van was even running. And I was getting some knocking, so maybe this was the cause. But basically, the electrodes that were in there are worn away, and that gap is more than double what it should be. It's just a ridiculous amount. I would recommend that you stick with the Champion spark plugs if it's a Grand Caravan like mine. I'll list the spark plug model numbers below in the info paragraph. They are made different. They look like a regular spark plug, but on the electrode and on the ground there's like a wafer of platinum. I think it's platinum. They're supposed to last 100,000 miles, and my experience has been that they come pretty close. Like 90,000 miles, they're usually still okay, or just failing at that point. These were supposed to last with iridium. We're supposed to last like 100,000 miles. I got about 65,000 miles out of them. But I'll tell you why they look the way they do in my other video. Okay, everything goes back together in reverse order. I've already tightened down these nuts, the 4 bolts that are in there. I reattached my downspouts. I reattached my wire harness. Only thing I haven't done yet, haven't put these nuts onto here. What I recommend you do is put some anti-seize on there. What I find is that these nuts are very easy to strip, and they're also prone to rotting out on you, so the anti-seize will give them some protection. And now what I do is I tighten them down with the just a nut driver until I can't tighten them any farther. Then I take my stubby little 1/4 inch ratchet and I just give it a snug up. Be real careful. They're real easy to strip out. I did that on one of them on my first vans. Just be careful with that. Okay, cover's back on. Next step will be fish your tube through the hole there for your washer fluid, and then seat the grommet underneath, and then reattach your hose. Okay, all my Torx screws are in place. The little cam plastic thing is turned so the lever's up underneath a metal lip that's under there. When you're putting these in, know that the plastic clips they screw into float around. So at each one you may have to grab the cover and slide it back and forth until you see the spot that it's supposed to screw into. Putting on the wiper arms is kind of a cruel game. You have to put them on with the arm flipped up like that, and then when you think you have it in place, you flip it down and see how it goes. Now I can see by the dirt that's not in the right spot, so I gotta just move it again a little bit, and small movements here add up to big movements down there. So you gotta play with it. I always put the nut on, don't tighten it down, just slightly snug. Then turn on the windshield wiper in the car back and forth on high, turn it off, see where it settles, and then adjust as necessary. This can take you a while, just so you know. Okay, and that's it. I'm all done. Got the spark plugs in, engine's running good, everything's reassembled. Wipers are realigned. So if you found my video to be helpful, please like, share, and subscribe. And I will see you next time with my next video.